Thank you. Perhaps we could flip the lights, and I will ask my council colleagues if they have questions of either our consultant or our committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For starters, I want to thank our consultants for their presentation tonight and also for making this material available for a full month. Usually the release is to the public the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting, and as I'm looking at this, as familiar as I am with it, I'm very grateful that with Councilmember Karnaki's encouragement, we got some material that's really sophisticated and important to us out early for longer study. I also want to check with you, Linda, I think, or Reed, whichever you could answer this question about the massing studies. And I hope this is okay. I didn't ask this in our subcommittee meetings, but I'll tell you, when my mind sees those rectangles, blue and pink, whatever, you know, and the parking places and the driveway, I just immediately think, oh, that's where the building's gonna go. But my understanding of massing studies, as you said, is that's just a diagram, one potential diagram that's showing like the block of space that it could be. And the designer might come in and do something very different, is what I believe is correct.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
It's not even like this shape building is possible. It's really to just calculate what fits based with all the planning assumptions and how much parking and how much open space, like how much building can you put here. It has
Right.
zero reflection on what it could potentially look like.
And it's not about the footprint or the design or anything. The numbers and the phrases, the analysis is really the key part. So I always have to back my mind out of saying, okay, it's gonna look like that. You know, the pink and blue thing. So also one thing, the slides of scheme 1 and 2, I think they were number 24 and 26, that showed that also put an overlay over the Chamber of Commerce property, part of which there is the potential that the city owns, as well as our owning the museum. And I want to speak for myself and ask the subcommittee members to confirm this. There's never been any discussion about taking that property or any use of eminent domain, that we would simply take it away and give them some money. The discussion has always been to engage a conversation with these 3 property owners to see, for instance, if the Chamber of Commerce would like an improved office space, the little building that we're also attached to, which is really unique, and I think an architectural feat because it's all built of recycled materials, isn't very functioning for visitors or the employees there. So in our assumptions as we've talked about this, we've considered a highly visible location for the Chamber of Commerce. This is something, if they're involved, that we would negotiate and move on to a potential development partner. Highly visible and more functioning. I don't know what that looks like either, but it's very important in our relationship with the Chamber, if they're encouraged and willing to explore this, that they are well taken care of, if not better taken care of in this project. So that's the caution I just offer to everybody. When we look at those big cubes of buildings or rectangles, they're not necessarily going to be that, and they're not going to look like that. So I'm glad to have that verified. Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll just let you.
Okay, our procedure is that first we have a presentation. This is like our standard procedure. First we have a presentation, then I ask the city council if they have questions of staff or questions of the consultants, and then we proceed to public comment. So after our committee and my fellow council colleagues have asked their questions of the committee and of staff, we will move to public comment. So don't worry, you will get your chance to make comment. So are there questions of the consultants at this point from my council colleagues?
Questions of staff.
Or of staff? Councilmember Karnaki.
Okay, so just for the sake of the members of the public, I'll try to keep this short. And so for this council, this existing council, we had 2 meetings on establishing the goals and priorities for this council, and they were held on January 10th and January 31st, at which time we set a goal for the Pine Grove Square Committee, and find it here. Sorry about that. Okay, so according to our goals and policies, are our goals and priorities that this council set, and that was March 7th, 2017 when we approved. The goal was 2.1.7, which was to explore the concept for a new city hall and or new civic center building. So that was the goal of the Pine Grove Square Committee, as far as this council approved. So at some point along the way, the goal changed. And so the way I understand it from past conversations with the city attorney, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Larry, in order to change the goals and priorities of the city council, it needs to be brought forth for a public hearing to make sure we want to change that goal. So it should have come back prior to now in order for us to even decide if we want to explore the possibility of looking at other alternate uses for this property and whether we wanted to spend the money, which I think amounts to about $74,000, on the development of this project, which is, like I said, it was not something that I approved as part of our goals and priorities. So am I correct to assume that? So we're not allowed to do that.
Excuse me. We have a policy of not clapping. If you really have to do something, do this. But we try to give people safe space so that everyone can have an opinion. Thank you.
So, and so just in ending, so my position would be that it should have come back first, and we should have had this conversation prior to.
Councilmember Kornacki, I understand your point. However, this is about questions.
Right, well, the question is am I correct? Am I correct that in order for the goals and priorities for the city of Sebastopol, which we approved on March 7th, to be changed to a different goal, does that need to have a public hearing? Or can, for instance, the Committee on Water change its to a committee on weed abatement? Or can a committee just randomly change the goal of?
Councilmember, to answer your question, the committee didn't actually change the goal there. It was basically changed at the time that the committee reported to the council back in, I believe, October, when there was a full council meeting on the subject of Pine Grove Square, and the council gave approval at that time to go forward to engage the consultants to do the work that we're reporting on this evening. That was the council meeting of October 4, 2016. At that point in time, phase 1 had been completed. We had met with the community stakeholders, including the adjacent property owners. We had completed the process to identify the real estate consultant to do the financial feasibility analysis, who we retained. We have the scope of work for that. The council that night directed the committee to do phase 2, which we're reporting on this evening, which to include a full market assessment for potential development, et cetera, which I've already gone through earlier this evening to complete and report back to the council the complete financial feasibility analysis. The committee, as when the council was informed at that meeting and even before, had left by that time the concept of the only purpose of the committee was to relocate City Hall. They already realized at that time that that would not be the highest and best use, and it was reported that way to the city council. Unfortunately, I think what happened in, I believe, January of this year, when we went through the goals, did it in a kind of a marathon session here, going through all the goals, and it was basically the goal stated a different way, and I know that's not what's in writing here, 2.1.7. To state it a different way, the goal is simply to continue the work of the Pine Grove Square Committee, because as I said, it had been fully explored by the city council prior to that in October at a public council meeting. So it'll be nice to clean up that goal, to bring that up to speed, and it's not accurate as you read it. However, the council directed the work that was done this evening, and they directed that back in October.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other further questions of either the committee, staff, or our consultants?
Not at this time.
Thank you. You do, Michael, thank you.
Follow-up question. So this project, as it's coming forward, looks at the best financial, as far as monetary-wise, how it would best benefit the city, as opposed to what the best public good would be, say, opposed to a park or a civic center, or like, I really like Roner Park, where when you go to the Spreckles Arts Center, you make the check out to the city of Roner Park. I really like that idea. So, I think that the idea of the civic center, or some sort of community facility there, that the city would maintain the ownership of the property would be better. So I guess the question is what I previously stated.
Can I add to your question, actually? And I think the question here is this: I believe the consultants and the committee looked at there being a civic center. And I think the question, perhaps, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the question you're asking is, why aren't we looking at that? What were the results of your studying that use versus the use that you're pursuing now? Is that the part of your question, Michael?
It is, but I think that while the report you've done is great, it's an excellent, well put together report, but what I would like to see is what it might look like. I know that at one point there was a discussion about daylighting the creek and making that into a public commons area. With this plan, eventually it ends with the city selling that property. So it's no longer a commons, and the city no longer owns it. Did we reach out to a low-income housing developer during the process? So that's a question. Was that one of the considerations for development of the property?
I could address the first part of your question, which I think asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, council member, that asked whether the consultants were only looking at the financial gain to be had from this a particular project here, a project here. In actuality, the goals that were established by the committee, which the committee is asking the council to confirm again this evening, were a combination of public benefit, like I said in my introduction, beneficial in ways more than financial, beneficial in terms of revitalizing, enlivening, and expanding the downtown. I'm just reading from the goals: the downtown core, enrich existing businesses, to provide housing, both workforce and senior, extension of Willow Street. These are goals that go beyond financial. So yes, if the city's budget were unlimited, theoretically other consultants could review what it would take to build a performing arts center or a number of other uses, including nothing but affordable housing. But the city right now doesn't have the budget to do that. So what the committee was doing, what the council agreed with last October, was to kind of balance all those competing needs in the community. Find a way to pay for the benefits that the public would receive from this. So this project essentially pays for those benefits. It doesn't require the city to use its own budget to pay for it. It doesn't require somebody to give the money to the city to do it. The city pays for this through use of its property. So it's basically, as I see it, in conclusion, it's a balanced approach. And that's the kind of analysis. The other comment I would make is, it's not necessarily going to be the case that the city sells the property. We could conduct an alternate analysis to look at another option, which would be the city retains ownership of the property, and we're talking about the city receiving lease payments from the developer. This kind of analysis gives the city a lot more resources up front to do things now, but it's not off the table that the city could retain ownership of the property under other scenarios.
I have one other question.
If I may add, Michael, to that answer, and we take your questions one at a time, and this is my individual answer as a subcommittee. We did start out with that inquiry about a city hall, and as we assessed the needs of the community, it seemed to me personally that having a new grand city hall with lovelier chambers than this and other amenities for our city staff was more of a vanity pursuit when we were in a circumstance where people were contacting me about rents being increased when they've been a tenant for 13 years and now they're having to relocate, and other circumstances like that. So the focus shifted from kind of taking care of ourselves as a city government to taking care of our community in a way. We did talk about daylighting the creek, and in the repeated explorations of that idea with this subcommittee and earlier ones as stewards of the creek and all, it is well known now that to excavate that would create such a wide canyon down to a V to get to the water level that most of the property would be consumed with that. We may have a little trail along that, but not developable land. And so that presents a park concept. We have right now a comprehensive remodel plan for Ives Park that is something like, I don't know, $4 million or $8 million. Our planning department hasn't been successful in getting a grant, so we didn't feel like proposing another park or community space like that would be a go. So as our city manager has said, we shifted to those highest and best uses that are going to meet different community needs.
Just one more question with regard to, I know that you referred to the general plan, and I just, in the housing element on general plan, and it's on page 11.2 of the housing element, action A4, it says, review city-owned parking lots for possible use as affordable housing and mixed-use sites, provided existing parking is maintained. So was that taken into consideration? It's on page 11.2.
We're already doing that. Well, I guess the answer to that is that we are actually doing that. City-owned parking lot for possible use of affordable housing mixed-use sites. But it does require that the city maintain its parking, which it says there, and that has been a stated goal of basically this committee since day one. We don't have an actual project yet. That's the difficulty. That's why I started off my introductory remarks tonight by reiterating, as we've stated many times, we don't have an actual project here. Projects come with community input. Projects come with work from a developer As an example being the hospital, the hotel which was recently approved. Innovative ideas come from developers working with the city as owner, working with the community, and engaging with the community to try and find creative solutions. It has been the goal of this committee to maintain the existing parking. It said so day one. But we don't have an actual project yet. We are talking right now about financial feasibility and the types of public beneficial uses that could be obtained from a project like this. That is the focus right now.
So that means at this stage right now, looking to the next phase, if we're willing to go forward, we don't have an answer to all of the parking issues. So, no, we don't. We don't have that answer yet, but we are committed to get that answer because we understand as we've started and proceeded that that's a priority and it's in our general plan we've acknowledged.
So I guess I have more than one more question. So when, so I guess this would be more for the planners. So at the new retail, who will be employed and where will they live? Do we know? If there's new retail development below, so what I'm thinking is that they probably won't be able to afford to live there, and that would put more cars on the road and increase greenhouse gas.
I would say at this point in time, we don't know that. What we do know is that we want there to be a large affordability component to it. They may live and work there, they might live there and work somewhere else. It might be primarily seniors. We don't know that. Again, this is an idea that serves the community goals, which were first articulated in 1990 in the downtown plan and through all those documents that we referenced, so we didn't make it up. And it's supported by the financials. And so that's the question that we answered, and moving forward, those are the kinds of pieces of information that come to light.
I'm gonna keep going. Sorry to hold up the public comment. According to, and I think that Councilmember Gurney brought up the economic development board study about Sebastopol, and in it says that Sebastopol employs the largest proportion of workers in the service sector compared to any other city in Sonoma County. So I think this is going to add to that. And again, my question is, where are all these people going to live? And they're going to be commuting in, and that is going to increase the greenhouse gas effect. And I think that we'll have some discussion about the Climate Action 2020, which is aimed at, where there's a whole section here on Sebastopol, which is aimed at reducing our greenhouse gas footprint. And if people are driving around, if we're adding the hotel and now perhaps this mixed-use project and the mixed-use project up the street and the mixed-use project down the street, and that's a lot of additional big change, and cars circulating around, idling, looking for parking spots. For every mile that the car has traveled, that's 1 pound of carbon dioxide pollution. So I don't think that this project will help us meet our Climate Action 2020 goals.
Michael, we're about questions right now. Although, right, I appreciate your comments.
Right. So the question is, was it considered, did you take into consideration the greenhouse gas effects emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions from this project?
This is a development proposal to assess a downtown lot's ultimate potential, also in terms of what beneficial public uses can result from that. There is no specific project here. The City Council has for years been steadfastly supportive of reducing greenhouse gases. That is one of the good things about this particular piece of land, is the city owns it. We're not dealing with a developer that owns the land or has an option to buy the land and is coming forward and asserting development rights. We're talking about us being the owner there, and this council's been committed for years to that concept of reducing greenhouse gases. We don't have a specific project here, but that would be one of the things the council would consider in going forward and looking at specific ideas for projects here as the owner of this land and in control of that land.
Can I just add to that answer? If you read up anything about sustainable communities, density and urban, move people downtown so they can walk to do the things that they need to do rather than having to get in their car to go do them. So this is very much in keeping with sustainable principles. I know it's sort of like density, sort of a dirty word in sustainability, but it's actually really what's encouraged.
Just one quick follow-up to that is that I do understand that principle, but that is usually those kind of developments are along a planned transit corridor, and we don't have that. Everybody's driving, so we don't have a way to get from this point to this point in Sebastopol readily. So I do understand what you're saying, but those kind of developments only work where you have a transit system in place that's planned, and we don't have that at this
Okay.
point.
Yes, Councilman Hinton.
So I just wanted to add, it's not that I have no comment, I am very curious to hear what the public's comments are. I just wanted to add that. They always go down here and then wrap up with the mayor, so
Right.
excited to hear what the community feels about the presentation. I think that's the next step.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one very brief question, and that's, when I was looking at kind of the list of comparables that you had in here, these are all fairly old, and I wondered what happens if the property values turn out to be higher because these comps are old. For example, the hotel is probably our most recent comp. And what if the land value turns out to be appraised out at higher than we're predicting with your economic analysis? Does that preclude us as a city from A, selling it for that price, and then B, what does that do to the financial feasibility of the whole thing?
Yes, so the reference to the land comps, it's what I was, first of all, just to mention what I was saying before about the fact that there's not a lot of development opportunities in the city of Sebastopol. Well, as a consequence of that, that also means there aren't very many sales of properties.
Yeah.
And so we searched for the best comps that we could find, and you're right that some of the comps that we did find were a few years old,
Right.
so they were a bit dated. So we worked with the best data that we had available. But to answer your question about what the city could and could not do based on the value of the property, certainly you could sell the site for more. You would want to sell it for as much as you possibly could, assuming there would have a developer on the other end who could afford to pay it. The problem would be, from a legal standpoint, for trying to sell it for less than what we consider the fair market value, which would be considered a gift to public funds. So that would be a challenge. And there are, so just sort of talking about the next, sort of the process here, if in fact the council decides to move on to phase 3 to do further studies, and if in fact you move to phase 4, which would be an RFP to solicit proposals from private developers, that's the point at which you would know what developers would be willing to pay for the property and whether or not that value is at least fair market value. Our analysis today estimates that it is at what we think is fair market value, but only a developer, when that time comes around, will be able to answer that question.
So then if the fair market value turned out to be higher, then that would move up all the assumptions about what the rents would have to be. Are your rents, the rents are based on cost, or are the rents based on looking at current market rents in our general area?
The latter, yeah, the latter. So what we do to estimate market rents is we look at what are being charged in competitive properties. So we look not only in the city of Sebastopol, but elsewhere in the region where you have competitive apartment properties. And we estimated our rents based on that. And most developers, when they're running their own pro formas, will say, well, what do we think we can charge for these apartment rents? And that's how they would approach it as well. So we didn't back into that number.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any additional questions up and down areas here? Not seeing any, I'm just gonna make this as fast as possible. Can we have, I'm gonna open this up for public comment regarding this presentation, and how many people would like to make comment? So that's